So in this video, we're going to add in our player health. So you'll see here we have the health script. So our player is going to have our max health and then our current health. And if we play the game, you'll see that the player, if they actually run into an enemy, they're going to lose health. So we're down to 2, down to 1, down to 0. We have the player has died over here. Those kind of things. We have adjusted our scene a little bit here. We added in these spikes, so these will also cause the player to take damage, for example. And this is all going to be done via our damage script that we set up here. So we have the player health script and the damage script. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to add in a script for our player health. So I'll go over here into our scripts folder and we'll go ahead and create that. And I'm simply going to call mine player health. And once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and go into the player here and add that to our player. And we're making sure that we add it into the prefab. And then if you have anything that you haven't actually applied to your player by chance to the prefab, you can go ahead and do that now. So you can click on overrides and then click on apply all. All right, so now once we're inside the script here, like always, we're just going to delete that stuff at the top because we don't need it. We won't need our update, and I'll go ahead and remove this comment as well. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a serialized field. And this first one is going to be of type int, and we're going to call it max health. And I'm going to set mine to 3 to start, as that's a very standard thing. And I think that that's what we'll start with for now. And then after that, we're going to need another int, but this one we're going to be, this one's going to be public, and this is going to be called our current health. And then down in our start method, we're going to initialize our max health. So we're going to set the current health and set that equal to our max health. And so now underneath this, we're going to want to do a couple of things. We're going to want a method here for taking damage. So this one's going to be public and it'll be void. And I'm going to call it take damage. And this is going to take in an int. And that int we'll simply call damage. And so what we're going to do with this is we're going to take the current health and then we're going to subtract. So it's going to be minus equals our damage. So we're going to take the current health, and that current health is then going to equal the current health minus the damage. And one other thing that we're going to want to do is if the player dies. So what we'll do is we'll say if our current health is ever less than or equal to 0, then we want the player to die. And obviously we don't have this method created yet. So all we have to do is you can hover over it. For example, click the little line here and click generate method, and it'll put it right below here, or you can type it out, whichever one you prefer. And then for now, for this, all we're going to do is we're going to say debug.log. And then we'll say, like, I don't know, player has died. And then afterwards, we'll put in a comment here so we don't forget, but this is where we will add the death logic. So things like respawn or something like that. Or the game over screen, for example. So we'll go ahead and leave that comment there. And that's really all that we have to do for the health part. So back in the editor here, the next thing that we need to do is make the player actually take some damage. So there's several different ways that we can do this. I'm going to do it with a new script. I'm going to call this one enemy damage. So once we have this script opened up, we'll go ahead and again, we'll just remove that stuff at the top, and we can remove both the start and the update as we don't need either of them. And then the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to go ahead and create a public int, and this one we're going to call damage amount. And I'm going to set that equal to 1, as that's what we want our enemy to hit our player for. And then we're going to set up the on collision enter for the 2D. As that's going to be called when the object collides with one another. So this is going to be a void on collision enter, and make sure you do 2D here. Inside here, what we're going to do is we're going to try to get the player health component from the object that we collided with. And then we will say that if the object has the player health component, then we're going to deal damage to the player. So we're going to do player health, and we'll type in player health again. And that's going to equal collision dot, game object dot get component player health. So we're going to be looking for the component there, the player health component on the object. So now we're going to want to say if the collided object has a player health component, then this is where we're going to deal the damage. So we'll say if the player health does not equal, so exclamation point equal, and we're going to say it does not equal null, so it's not empty. So there is something there. That means that it's able to grab the player health component. Then we're going to say player health dot take damage, and we're going to take in the damage. We're going to take in the damage amount. And that's really it for this script. It's not too much here. So all we're doing is we're setting our damage amount here, how much damage the enemy is going to do. And then we're looking for the player health object here with the item that we're colliding with, or with the object that we're colliding with. And if we are able to find it, so only our player will have the player health object. So if we're able to find it, that means we're colliding with the player. And if we are doing that, then we're going to want to take damage. And then back in our editor here, we'll want to add this to our enemy. So we can go ahead and drag this onto our enemy. And depending on how you added that there, don't forget to make sure you do your override stuff and apply that to the prefab. So let's go ahead and we'll play this here and take a look. So if we click on our player, you'll see down here or over here that we have our max health and our current health, and make sure we have the console here. So if we go to the right, one thing that you'll notice is the enemies still block this or get bounced off the spikes, but we can run right through them, which obviously we don't want. But if you watch the health, you'll see that it went down to 2 to 1 every time we touch the enemy. We are losing health, which is great. And if we lose all 3 of our lives, the player has now died. So it is working as we would expect. So now the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to address the spikes. Currently, as you saw, the player can simply walk right through them with no issues, which is something that we obviously don't want. So we're going to want to make a couple of changes to this. So what we're going to do is in the editor here, we're going to go into the spike prefab, and then we'll go into the collider. And I'm actually going to uncheck the is trigger here. And then now we're going to need to go into the enemy script. So we are actually down here calling on trigger enter, which is causing the enemy to flip, which we need to change now. And to do that, so to change this, all we need to do is on trigger enter, we need to change to on collision enter, and make sure we do 2D as well. And then this collider 2D, we need to also change. So this needs to be collision 2D instead. All right, so back here in the editor, still in the spike prefab, the changes that we made will make the player bounce off the spikes. However, the player's not going to take any damage. So what we need to do is we still need to add this enemy damage script that we set up to the spike. So now if we go ahead and play the game, we'll see if we run over here and jump, and we are now colliding with the wall, or with the spike here. And if we click on our player, we're going to have lost some lives. Yep, so we're down to 1 life already. So when we collide, it is doing what we expect at this time. All right, so now that we have the basics of those things set up, I think we're going to make the environment a little bit better here than it is. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click over here and I'm going to create an empty, and I'm going to call this one wall. And then we're going to add in a collider to this. So I'm just going to do a box collider 2D. And then if we scroll in a little bit, I'm going to open this up and edit the collider. And you can see it's kind of hard to see right here, but the collider's right here. I'm just going to make it kind of skinny, maybe a little bit taller. And then there we go. Move it over here so it's a little bit easier to see, but you can see it there. So that's what we're going to do. And then I'm going to move this one kind of over here. So at all of the openings, we're going to end up using these, but I'll get this one set up first. And one other thing we'll need to do here is we're going to need to add the tag of wall to this. And then let's go ahead and make this a prefab as well. And to make sure everything's still clean, I'm going to move this into the environment. And then for the first section here, maybe let's add in another enemy. So I'll select this one, do Control D, and I'll simply move him over here. We'll put him right there. And so now if we press play, this guy should bounce off this wall and start coming back towards us, which is great. So now we can, we'll have an enemy to avoid first, and we are, however, running into the wall. So we'll have to fix that because we don't want that to happen. So what we'll do is actually back in our enemy script here, we're going to go ahead and change this back from on collision enter 2D to on trigger enter. And again, we'll change this from collision 2D to collider 2D. And that's going to basically take care of our issue. The other last part though, is we're going to want to remove from our spikes. So if we go into our spike prefab here, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to remove the tag of wall and make it untagged. So now the spikes are not going to prevent the enemies or make the enemies bounce off them and flip. However, this wall still should. You'll see. And that didn't work exactly how we wanted. So let's go ahead and see what's going on. And the last thing, what we need to do to fix that is simply make the wall here a trigger, like so. Under the collider, oops. And again, just make sure you apply all of the changes to the prefabs. But now if we try this one last time here, we should see the enemy bounce off. And then this one can go over there. And then if we take our player, we can actually just run right through the wall now. All right, so if we zoom out a little bit, maybe we'll adjust a couple more of these platforms. So to change this one, I don't really like how we have this, I don't think. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select the rect tool here. I'm gonna move this in a bit, I don't know, maybe right here or so. And then I'm gonna Control D to duplicate that. And then we'll move this over. And I'm gonna do the same thing with this actually. I'm just gonna make this one really small. Like so. And then I'm going to duplicate this one again here. And you can do this however you want. Just make it look however you want it to look kind of. And that's perfectly fine. Normally, you could probably use a tool like Blender or something like that to make this look, nicer, if you wanted to. But for our purposes, I think this will be good. So we'll do something like this, and then you'll see that these aren't really in the right order, for example. So for this one, to do that, what you want to do is go back to the sprite renderer. And for this one, the order and layer, it's at 0 right now. So if we do like -1, it'll go behind the item that's there. And then we see that we also have our backgrounds at -1. So what I'm actually going to do, just so nothing gets messed up here, is I'm going to change the backgrounds to -5 for now. That way they're always for sure going to be in the back. So now that looks all right there. And then what I'm going to do is take the spike and move this down here, maybe like so. So it's actually down in the ground. And then again, just Control D, move them how you want them to look. Something like this. I think that looks all right. And then again, they're not behind it. So I'll go ahead. Actually, this one I'm going to delete because we don't want that one anymore. And then I'll select all of these and I'm going to change these to -2. So they're going to be behind, since this one was -1, they'll show up behind that actually. So it'll look like that, which I think will look pretty good. Then obviously our enemy will need to move over here. We can duplicate him, put another one over here, and then we need to grab the wall. So we had the wall here, and then we just need to put this everywhere. We don't want our enemies to be able to fall off. So we don't want our enemies falling off. We don't want them falling into the pit here. So we'll go ahead and block that off and block off the other edge. So that looks pretty good, I think. So if we go ahead and save that and press play, we should have all of these guys bouncing off the walls, which is great. That's perfect. And then, we can run over here. We can check it out ourselves. We have to fix that. Obviously, that's not something we can have, but for now it's looking pretty good. If we can land on these, we'll have to adjust that stuff as well. Because we're not able to jump off of these or anything like that. But for the most part, it's looking pretty good. So for our player movement and not being able to jump on the spikes, remember we have over here in our player movement script, the player needs to also be grounded to be able to jump. Also grounded for the animations to play. So what we need to do is we need to take the spike or go into the spike prefab and set this layer to ground. And that should fix that. So if we go and test that out real quick, just to make sure it's working. So if we go and head over here, now we can run on top of here. We're obviously, dying. We're taking a lot of damage. However, we can run on here now. Still can't jump, but we can run. Okay, so to fix the issue here with our player not being able to jump while they're on the spike, it's because of the collider here. We're using the polygon collider, and you can see that there's these big openings, if you will. So what we can do is, again, we can go back into here. We can uncheck this, turn it off, or simply remove this component, and then go ahead and add in a box collider 2D instead to the spikes. So now all of these should have the box collider on it, and you'll see that this takes up like an actual square above it, which is fine for our purposes. And so now if we try and do this and we run over there real quick, now we can run and now we can jump while we're on the spikes as well, which we'll need to do in case the player falls on there. They can jump off real quick, for example. So one quick thing that we can do for our enemies here to stop them from flying every time the player runs into them is we can go into our enemy prefab here, and we can actually go under our rigid body 2D, and we can simply freeze the rotation on the Z and freeze the position on the Y. This is going to make it so it can't rotate and it can't go up and down. It can only go left and right. So now if we go in and actually play the game here, when we run into our enemy, you'll see that he just kind of moves backwards, which is fine for now. If we hit it, obviously we're going to want to move and stuff like that. But for now, that will work for us until we get a little bit further and we add in some animations for the enemy and actually make we'll make the player, when they if they jump on top of the enemy or something like that, for example, it'll kill the enemy and drop them down, similar to like Mario and stuff. But for now, I think that that's pretty good. And I think that this is pretty much where we'll leave off in this video. So in this video, we did add the player health. So now the player, if you click on it, it does have, they do have health down here. So they have the current health, max health, all of that stuff. Every time they collide with an object or with an enemy, whether it be one of the moving ones or one of the spikes, it does lose some health. So that part is working. In one of the next videos, we will go ahead and work on adding some additional stuff. We'll also work on fixing some of the stuff like with the enemies, how when we jump, you know, it kind of gets stuck there. We obviously don't want that. So we'll work on getting that fixed. Little things like that. And then we'll add, you know, we'll fill out the rest of our level, and maybe we'll add in a couple more obstacles or something along those lines, and then we'll add the finish line as well. We'll add in some UI, those kind of things. We'll do all of that in some of the next episodes. Thanks for watching.